and we're always up at the big house on the farm on Friday nights. I'm trying out. One reason I'm doing tonight is just going to be a quick show. Is I have gotten software where I can live stream on Facebook and on the YouTube channel at the same time. So we're going to test and see how that's doing. If you would go into my Facebook page and see if you can see me live. That's Miriam.
Hello.
The month February is almost over, and most of you know that was African American History Month. So I have tried to post every day this month an article dealing with Robeson County and African Americans. Did some really good articles, I think. We had an article on Thompson Institute, who was started by Alexander Thompson, who was a slave. That later, after he died, Mr. Knuckles came and was the principal there for years. Named the Martin Luther King Road in Lumberton. So check this out. If you haven't looked at the articles, go back on Blake Tyner, historian, on my Facebook page, and you can read all these articles. Also, the article today was on the Rosenwald schools, which lots of people don't know about the Rosenwald schools. We have a school in Fairmont. It's the only one of the 14 that were in Robeson County that was actually named for him. Julius Rosenwald was the CEO of Sears and Roebuck, and he's the one who made Sears and Roebuck's main thing their catalog, because free rural mail delivery became a thing in 1904, and he realized that you could then reach the public who couldn't get to a Sears store with a catalog. So that's how they really made their money. But he started the Rosenwald Institute, which helped fund schools for black children. And there were like 500 plus schools just in North Carolina, and 14 of those were in Robeson County. The one in Fairmont, like I said, was named for him. He specifically asked that schools not be named for him because he didn't, even though he was partly funding them, he didn't want the schools to carry his name. But they're often called the schools that Nickels and Dimes built, because he would pay part of the cost, but then the community had to raise the funds through the school board or whatever fundraisers they wanted. So lots of times it was literally people bringing in nickels and dimes to pay. Like the one here in Lumber Bridge, they couldn't raise a lot of money, so people were cutting timber off their land and bringing in as their donations. Then I've got a really interesting article yesterday, interview with a 106-year-old man in the 50s, John Edmond. So it talks all about what his life was like. I was lucky to find a lot of slave obituaries in the Robesonian. So there's a whole one day where I'm posting all of these slave obituaries. And some people were like 105, 106, 107. They were very, very old, lived long lives. And lots of times it tells who their owners were. So people, if you're descended from one of those, you could actually figure out where your family lived before the war. I covered lots of church history. I did St. George's in Maxton, Methodist Church. I did First Baptist, the African American First Baptist, which is over off of 6th Street in Lumberton, and also the African American Black Church in Fairmont, the Baptist Church. We've got some really, really wonderful writers and poets that came out of Robeson County. James McGirt was a poet, so I covered him one day. And David Bryant Full out as a porter on the railroad between Lumberton and Wilmington. He ended up in New Brooklyn and wrote up there for a newspaper. And actually, there was a African American group in Brooklyn, and undoubtedly they were all over the place, but it was called like North Carolinians in New York or something like that. But he was like the head of that and promoted that. And it was a way for all these people who had immigrated from down south up north to still keep in with their roots. But I've been really, really pleased with the reactions that I've gotten so far. Like the one yesterday on John Edmonds, it reached over 2,100 people and had 189 engagements. And engagements means that somebody either hit like, or they loved it, or they forwarded it on to somebody. I think one of my posts one day, 34 people had forwarded it on or posted it on their page. The one on slave obituaries reached 600, over 2,600 people with a little over 400 engagements. I also had a listing that I'd gotten at the state archives of marriages from 1865 that we posted, and it's reached over 2,200 people. So really, really good responses. I did one on Alvin Pope, who was an educator and poet, a preacher and a poet from Robinson County. Now, tomorrow I'm doing an article, which will be the next to the last article, and it is on the Whitting School, which was the first prominent black school, not only in Robinson County, but in this part of North Carolina. And it was opened in the 1870s in Lumberton. Had some really, really famous people who came through it. Probably the most famous person was the last African American elected to the U.S. Congress after the Civil War. So he was the last one to serve before blacks started not being able to get into Congress or the offices after Reconstruction. And I think it was actually not until the 70s or early 80s that the next African American was elected to Congress from North Carolina. So he was George White, so you can read up on him. But Whitting School is a really, really interesting school and very, very prominent. Matter of fact, I'm doing some more research on it because I think that it is something that people know that it was here. Some people know that it was here in Lumberton, but they don't really have any idea the reaching effects that it had. So I'm actually, one of my projects is going to be, see, can't get a state historical marker for that. We had one put in for the Thompson Institute. His descendants worked really hard, and I guess about 4 years ago, they put one up in front of the Knuckles School for the Thompson Institute, which was the first institute up there before Knuckles. So, and then on Sunday will be the last posting for African American History Month, and it's just a short video on Ida Van Smith and a couple of others, and it was an exhibit that we had at the Robinson County History Museum 8 years ago, and the Tar Heel Traveler came in from WRAL and talked with me and with Mrs. Van Smith, and Ida Van Smith was the first African American flight instructor. Yes. And she was born here in Lumberton in like 1903. And when she was a small child, like 5, 6 years old, she'd go to the air shows with her daddy and sit on his shoulders. She said, "Daddy, I want to fly a plane. I want to fly a plane." And he told her, he said, "Nobody's going to teach a little black girl in North Carolina how to fly a plane." Well, she finally did her first solo flight when she turned 50, and then went on to form the Ida Van Smith flight schools for kids. So there's a short video that the Traveler did, but we're going to talk about her. I'm going to post a big article on her next month, because starting March 1st, March is Women's History Month. So we're going to have some interesting articles on women from Robinson County. There'll be Ida Van Smith. There will be Margaret French McLean, who was the person who saved the governor's mansion when they wanted to tear the governor's mansion down in Raleigh. We also are going to have, I cannot think, her name is escaping me now, but she's a Russell, and she was born in Maxon. She became a famous opera singer in New York. Actually, the first female to produce a movie, and her husband was Oscar Minovich, who was a famous African American. He produced several movies. He was the first African American to have a novel published in the United States. So we'll cover that. Also, she comes from interesting people. Her father had a newspaper after the Civil War. He had an African American newspaper, Maxon. He was also the first black elected in Maxton to serve on the town council. The next one would have been in the 90s when Lily McCoy was elected. So probably over 100 years between the time that he was elected and she was elected. I'm doing some research. If he wasn't the first elected official, African elected official in Robeson County, had to be one of the first. So we'll talk about that when we talk about his daughter. So what I want you to do is, it's impossible to cover everybody in a month, but send me comments about how you like the stories that have been published this month, but also people that you think were people of note that we should know more about. So we'll do some follow-ups on that. And in this coming month, if you'll send me women that you think have accomplished something, that have played major roles or become very famous from Robeson County, and we'll talk about them this month. So, all right, I'm gonna sign off. It looks like we went live on Facebook and on YouTube. So be sure to forward this to your friends if they didn't get a chance to watch. And also be sure you send me your comments. And for all these articles, if you'll go to search on Facebook, Blake Tyner Historian, you'll be able to find all the articles that I've published this month and the ones that we'll do this next month. Right. Y'all have a great weekend. Have a good day.